Hey guys, Becky here, FiveTwoBaker, welcome back. So this week I'm going to share with you guys how to go from making a simple little daisy like this for your cakes to making one that looks a bit more realistic. As you know, I love realistic looking flowers, and these are so easy to make by just adding a few extra steps to the same thing that you would have done with this. So let's get right to it. So starting off with your carrier wire, mine is about a 20 gauge, go ahead and roll a little loop at the top and then bend it over so it's perpendicular to the rest of the wire. If you plan on not using any wires in your daisy, then I would go ahead and start off with a straight wire anyway, just so that it's easier to handle. Go ahead and dip the end of your wire into some edible glue, dabbing any excess off. And then use some yellow gum paste or flour paste, whatever you have on hand. Roll a little circle out and then press it right on top and wrap it all around your wire to secure it. You want the bottom of the daisy center to be almost the shape of a cone. You don't want too much excess, but you don't want it to completely cut off either. You want there to be a bit of a cone shape. Just for size, mine is smaller than the actual daisy cutter that I'll be using in the center, but you go ahead and make it whatever size you'd like. Once you're ready, before everything dries, go ahead and use a toothpick to add some texture to the entire top of the center and the sides. You can also use a brush, that would be faster because it has more bristly ends, or anything else you have on hand. I also have this little metal brush. I'm not exactly sure what it's for, but it adds really great texture. Now for the center, again, the yellow center, if you want to add a bit more color to it, just use a darker shade of yellow or a yellow with a brown. I'm using Buttercup by Wilton, and then I'm just going to dab it on. I don't want to smoothly color the top because I want it to be darker in some spots, lighter in others, because I'm not going to be using any color dust. So this is just going to give me different shades so that it adds to the texture. Once you're happy with that, then go ahead and set it to dry for just a bit while we work on the petals. For the petals, I'll be using some white flour paste, so roll it out, but don't roll it so thin that you can see through it. We're going to stretch out each petal just a bit. Using just a generic daisy cutter, this is a cutter that came in a huge fondant kit that I bought a long time ago. I'm going to go ahead and punch it right out to get ready to vein it. This is a little foam board, it's from Wilton, and it'll do just fine for this. Then using a generic little Dresden tool, what we're going to do is using the back of the Dresden tool, go on the center of each petal and just pull it out a bit to thin it and to stretch it further out just a bit. We don't want it to be thick and flat. We want to give it a little bit of shape and make it a little thinner. Once you're done with the centers of each petal, then go ahead and using the side of your Dresden tool, go on the side of each petal and give it a few veins by scoring it from the center out. And then using the other side of your Dresden tool, do the same on the other side of the petal. And this will give you texture, it'll give you movement, and it'll thin out the entire petal so it looks more realistic and not so flat and thick. Again, the yellow center, add some edible glue to the bottom and just a little bit up the sides. You go ahead and grab your petals that are still fresh. You put them partly at the side, and depending on how big your center is, mine is very large on the petals. I'm going to squeeze one side up, then the other, so that the very end of the petals meets perfectly with my center of my daisy. And then I just go ahead and start to squeeze it all around. And some of my petals are going to overlap, but that's okay because I think it looks a bit more natural. If you're using the single wire, then it should pop right off and you can put it to dry in your mold, whatever mold it is that you're using. For the leaves and the calyx, we're going to go ahead and roll out some green flour paste And I'm rolling mine out in a Ziploc bag so that I can then use this later to thin out the edges just with my fingers, and you'll see how. I go ahead, open it, and then I dust each side, and then I'll use for the calyx just a generic calyx cutter. They come with pretty much any flower set. And then I'll use an Exacto knife to cut out some pretty long petals. You can cut out any shape that you like. I just happen to like how the skinny petals looked on these daisies. Once they're cut out, I'll go ahead and remove all of the excess paste, and I'll leave my calyx and my leaves still in there. Sandwich them again in the little Ziploc bag and use my finger to press down and smooth everything out so that I don't have blunt edges. You could also do this on a foam board with a rolling ball tool, but this method works just fine for me. Now, if you'd like, you can go ahead and use the Dresden tool to go ahead and score the sides of your leaves to give them a bit of texture. But you can also leave them perfectly smooth and they'll look just as beautiful also. Now for my calyx, I go ahead and peel it off and I add some edible glue on the center and about halfway up each calyx leaf. I run the wire right down the center of the calyx and I push the calyx to the top, and before I stick it on there, I go ahead and pinch each calyx end just so it's a bit more pointy. It doesn't look as dull and round. And then I press the rest of the calyx on. The reason I didn't glue it all the way up is because I want my calyx to sort of bend out and flow out so it doesn't look so pressed on and stiff. Now for the leaves, I'm using a very thin wire. This is about a 28-30 gauge. And all I do is peel off the leaf, add some edible glue to my wire, and then what I'm going to do is sort of tackle the wire right in between the leaf. So I press it on the center, and then from the back, I pinch it together over the wire so the wire is covered, and it helps give the leaf some shape at the same time. Go ahead and put that to dry. And once all my parts are dry, I grab some green floral tape, pull it to activate the stickiness, roll it down the center wire of my daisy, and attach any and all leaves that I want. Of course, if you're not using wires, you don't need to do this step, and you don't need to add wires to your leaf. But this is what they look like in the end. I think they're so beautiful and worth every single step. All right, guys, here it goes again, before and after. If you found this tutorial helpful, do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. I would super appreciate that. And if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments below and I'll make sure to get back to you. If not, I will see you guys for the next tutorial.